Hi crafty friends, it's Shana from ShanoukiArt and welcome to Art Journal August 2024. I am so excited to share these 12 episodes with you. This series will offer a fun playground for creativity where you can express yourself through mixed media, whether you are a beginner or have been art journaling for years. Art journaling comes in many forms, from collage to mixed media, painting, drawing, journaling, found objects, to name but a few. These videos will show you my take on art journaling, and it is by no means the only way to art journal. This is just where my style has developed to. We will work in small scale to make all of this less intimidating, and I will share my creative process. I will show you how I do layering, how I create contrast and balance, how I blend backgrounds. You will see my full thought process behind each page. I will take you out of your comfort zone to explore new techniques and try new things. It'll be fun, relaxing, and it'll feed your soul. I hope you will join me on this mini mixed media trip. You can follow along and create with me, or you can simply watch, be inspired, and then create in your own time. The essence of this series lies in the joy of exploration. So let's dive in to this paper crafting adventure and explore, learn, and create. We're going to start with a piece of mixed media paper. You could also use copy paper, but that may be a little thin for what we're doing. You could also use scrapbook paper, cardstock, or watercolor paper. I'm going to start by tearing up an old book page into pieces and sticking those pieces down onto my mixed media paper with a glue stick. The idea behind this is like breaking a blank page, and what I like to call let it go. We're going to apply some collage and different color mediums to build up this page. But the idea is not to overthink it. Let the page develop itself. The reason I call it let it go is because you need to let go of any anxiety you have about putting the wrong thing in the wrong place, or any fear that you have of getting it wrong. There is no wrong in what we're doing. Just have fun. And don't be afraid to try new things. You'll notice when I stick my book page pieces down, they're not always facing the same way. Sometimes they're sideways, sometimes they're upside down. Some people don't like that. I personally don't mind, especially when you see how we're going to use this at the very end. So for this part, we're literally just applying glue stick and then sticking the book page piece on top. This is our starting point. Leave this to dry really well. When we come back to it, we're going to start pulling some of this paper off. Some of the edges will be a little loose, so you can grab those and pull gently, and you'll notice there where the glue is applied, the paper stays behind, tearing it, making it look worn and used. In some areas, the top layer of the paper will tear, so you can actually see the words from underneath the page. I really love this effect. We're then going to pick some colors for this piece. I'm going with turquoise and a lime green, and maybe a bit of dark blue. I'm going for the cool colors. You can pick cool or warm colors, but I would stick to about 2 to 3 colors. I'm going through all my color mediums and I'm bringing them all out. I've got acrylic paints, distress inks, I've got regular ink, and I've also got watercolors. You don't have to have so many. You can have 1 or 2. If you've only got acrylic paints, that's fine. If you've only got watercolors, that's fine too. I also have my color burst powders. I'm not going to use probably all of these, but I have them all out, so they're readily available if I decide to use them. I also have these gelato crayons. So whatever thing I have that is in a turquoise or a green, this is an acrylic crayon, I bring them all out. Again, you don't need to have all of these. And now we're going to start adding the color. Not worrying where we're putting it, we're just going to apply it. I'm going to start with my watercolors. I'm spraying some water on them just to get them activated. And then taking a flat medium paintbrush, I'm just going to apply some of the watercolor to the edge of my paper. And then I'm going to use my water spray bottle and spray that and let it run down along the page. I normally use quite a bit of water when I do this technique. That is why I think a thicker kind of paper is more suitable. If you're going to do this kind of method, a copy paper will probably tear at this point. No method as to where I'm putting this. I'm just going around and adding some of the light green. And of course, I'm applying some splatter. Wherever there is some watery color, I'm going to apply some splatter. I will do exactly the same with the darker green. You'll notice I haven't dried the light green yet, and I'm letting the dark green sort of blend into the light green and mix. It'll create a different tone. If you don't want them to mix, or if you're using colors that could become muddy, you can dry the first color first. But because mine are both greens, I don't mind if they blend into each other at certain points. You'll notice I've kept the spiral end where I've torn this out of a spiral book. I love that rough end and I like including it in my work. You can always cut it off if you like a neater finish. I'm then going to dry this layer. Using my green ink and a pipette, I'm going to apply a few drops over the page here and there. It's made quite big puddles, but I like that. What I'm going to do now is use a flat type of instrument. I'm going to use my little plastic spatula and I'm going to smack it down against the little puddles and it's going to splash out the color. Like I said, don't be afraid to try new things. If there's too much color, we can apply some water to let it lighten up or move further down onto the page. And then drying this layer too. I'm now going to add some Distress Oxide ink. It is a light green and I'm just going to splash that over the surface and apply some water. Again, it'll go over some of the darker areas which will create then different hues and tones of the green. Let me know what you think so far. Does it look like a big green mess to you, or can you see potential in this piece? And now for some turquoise, I'm using my Color Burst powders for this. They are super concentrated, so it looks quite dark at the moment, but I'm going to apply more water to dilute it a little bit more. And I'm going to use the paintbrush to move some of that around and also to create more splashes. And I also feel I need to lighten this a bit more, so I'm applying more of the Distress Oxide ink over the darker areas. You'll notice as I'm drying it, I do tend to turn the paper around and put it at an angle and let the colors run some more. If there are super big puddles that are going to take too long to dry, you can just dab them with a tissue. I'm now going to go in and do some mark making. I have my acrylic crayon and I'm just making X's over some of the lighter areas. Using my turquoise metallic acrylic paint, I'm going to use a flat paintbrush and do some mark making like this. Just little dabs directly onto the paper. What I really love about this is that no matter how many times you do it, the result will always be different. And as you're creating with me, every single one of our pieces will be totally unique. I tend to do this over the areas that have less interest, where they're not quite as busy or where there isn't so much detail of the below color, and also over the lighter colors to create contrast. I'm then watering this down, and again, guess what? I'm applying some splatter. I'm then going to dry this really well. I'm now going to use my fine tip applicator bottle with watered down black acrylic paint to create some scribbles. This, as you'll see, will create great contrast. I'm not writing anything specific, it really is just scribbles. And I'm scribbling in all directions. This project does not have a right side up. I think it needs additional contrast, so I'm back to my book page. I'm going to tear some little squares and I'm going to stick those directly onto the page on top of the color. I'm going to fill in some of the gaps where maybe the color is just flat or there isn't very much going on. This is also a great way to cover up any areas you maybe don't like. Perhaps a color has gone murky, or you've done something that isn't quite what you wanted. For example, at the bottom where my scribbles are, the paint underneath was still slightly wet, so it smudged the scribbles. I'm just going to cover some of that up. This is what I love about building layers in mixed media. I'm going to stick these down with a glue stick. Just a quick note about my Art Journal August videos, especially for those people who are new to my channel. I'm creating these videos in the same way I create all my other videos. I speed up the time, and when I do this voiceover, I really only talk when I'm doing something new or specific. I don't believe in filling in the empty sounds with my voice or even music, so there'll be some times where there is actually no sound at all. Feel free to play your own music in the background, or perhaps a podcast, whatever you find relaxing and inspiring. But I really don't like talking just for the sake of talking. I now have my black watercolor pencil that I dip the point in some water, and then I'm drawing roughly around each of those paper squares that I've just stuck down. We want it to look hand-drawn and rough, thicker and thinner in some areas. This makes them stand out a little bit more. I'm now going to go in with my correction pen, also known as Tipex or liquid paper, depending where you're from, and I'm going to do some mark making with this. I'm going around my little painted turquoise squares to give them some definition. This also helps lighten the look. You can add more things at this point. I think I'm going to stop here. Let me show you a close-up of this paper so you can see a little bit more of the details and how all the layers are shining through. People often ask, why do I put down collage paper if I'm just going to cover it up with paint? And I've actually created a whole separate video quite a few years ago to explain the difference between using collage paper in the background and not using collage paper. I will link that in the description box below if you're interested in looking at that, but you can see how those layers shine through and give depth to the overall look. We're now going to add some of this to our journal. A piece of this is going to be the front cover of our journal. So the book that I have measures 4 inches by 4 inches, depending what size you have. You're just going to cut a piece to fit the front. The whole masterboard has got like one look, and you'll see once you start cutting it up into pieces and you see each individual piece how different it looks. I really love making these large mixed media masterboards and then cutting them into tags or into embellishments. The surprise when you turn them over after cutting is one of my favorite bits. How cute does that look for a cover? My little journal measures 4 inches by 4 inches. I've cut this slightly smaller so it doesn't go over the edge. What I am going to do to finish this off as a cover is I'm going to go all the way around with a black marker, creating sort of a frame. I'm doing this freehand. I want it a little bit wonky. You could use a ruler if you prefer straight lines. I'm going to attach mine to the front cover using double-sided tape. And because the masterboard we created has no right way up, you can turn this piece around until you find the way it looks best for the front cover. I'm adding some Mod Podge to adhere down the spiral end. I can't really apply the double-sided tape over this because then there'll be sticky bits in between the holes. I'm so excited, my little journal has a front cover. Using another piece of our recently created masterboard, we're going to cut out a tag. I'm cutting it 5 centimeters by 10 centimeters. That is roughly 4 inches by 2 inches. And this tag we're cutting is going to fit in one of the pockets in our journal. Using a ready-made tag, I'm going to use it as a template to cut off the corners. I'm then going to use a strip of white cotton fabric, and I'm going to double fold it and then staple it to the top as the tie for my tag. I'm now taking a piece of color coordinating thread. This is just regular thread you'd use on your sewing machine, and I'm bunching it up and putting it where my fabric tie is at the top and stapling that down too. Using my black watercolor pencil, dipping the point in water again, I'm just going around the edge of my tag to finish it off. When I pop it into my pocket, it is just slightly too long. I am going to trim it down. The measurements I gave earlier of the 4 inch by 2 inch was actually the final size. It started off slightly bigger, but then it was too long and sticking out too much, so I cut it down. Now save all the other bits of our masterboard. We will use those later on in the series. I really hope you enjoyed this first episode of Art Journal August and that you'll join me for the rest of the series. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Happy creating! Bye!